You are listening to the Doc Malik podcast. This show is 100% independent and fully funded by listeners like yourself. So, if you wish to support Ahmed in all that he is doing, then please subscribe to his channel on Spotify or his Substack. Or simply buy him a coffee with a one-off donation, links to which can be found at docmalik.com. Now, let's get on with the show.
Indeed. Yeah.
How far did you travel to get here?
It took me just over an hour and a half. I stopped for a coffee in Beaconsfield, which I haven't been to for many years.
Oh, why do you know Beaconsfield?
I have no idea, except that I used to have a girlfriend who lived not far from Beaconsfield, and I used to go there quite a lot. But I never kind of... Yeah.
That's it, that phone call we had. You had girlfriends all over the place.
Well,
you're quite the guy when you're younger.
We're not recording this, are we?
Well, maybe we are.
No. Yeah. It was a long time ago.
Long time. How long have you been married for?
30 years.
And obviously, you've been faithful since then.
Oh, absolutely. More or less.
Right, listen, tell me something. Why did you get into seaweed, of all things?
Oh, we're recording now, aren't we?
Yeah, we are now.
Yeah, okay. I tell you what, I thought about that, and I thought that's bound to be the first thing you ask me, because that's what people usually do.
I'm predictable, if anything.
I think it's an interesting little story, but I feel I want to preface it. I want to defunct a sort of major myth, first of all, about seaweed, and I want to just go into the sort of the real meaning of seaweed for human nutrition, and that sort of explains why I'm doing it. But then I'll come to that, if I may.
Yeah. Because
you hear that there are 10,000 species of seaweed in the world. 70% of the planet is ocean. So, there's more ocean than there is agricultural land to grow our land foods. And it's a very, very ancient plant. And we're not even sure it's a plant, because it actually is, in many ways, more like an animal. It actually has sperm and eggs, so it's...
Really?
Yes, it's not a vegetable at all in the sense that people normally accept, because we talk about land foods and land vegetables. This thing is quite opposite, really opposite in many ways, and it's quite different. So with that starting point, there are really the real truth is that there are really two kinds of seaweed, and the first kind is for our daily foundation for our daily nutrition. And it's a foundation because it's the home, it's the residual place where all the micronutrients are. You find all the micronutrients in seaweed, and that applies to most of the species. But so first of all, it's a normal food source. And it's the only food source, because it comes from the ocean, of all the micronutrients. So it has all the minerals. The ocean is the great repository of natural minerals and soluble minerals, which I'll come back to. So it's a way of getting into the body tiny, tiny amounts of all the micronutrients. There are about 144 nutrients in seaweeds. So this is the first reason that we should use it, and it's the real meaning of seaweed, to get all of those micronutrients back into our daily, into our body, and in part of our daily diet. So that's a very special thing. It's not something to eat once a week or once a month as some kind of gourmet food or some kind of glamorous vegetable. It's not. That is a way that people use it, and that's fine. It's fun. But really, seriously, foundation of our daily diet is really critical. And then the second way is in therapy. as a therapeutic food. And then the only difference is that you're using much larger amounts. What I've got to put what I got a little bit of evidence for that is that when we started out, which is now 27 years ago, during the first 10 years, we didn't actually know a lot about what was in our seaweed. We hadn't done all the compositional research that we've done since. But a lot of practitioners started to use it. And they came back and said that, we're using what you said, use it in the daily diet as a foundation for the diet, around 1 gram a day, which is it's a quarter of a teaspoon of dried particles of seaweed. We've been using it at sort of 4 grams, 5 grams and above, and we're finding some amazing results, more therapeutic results. It's actually having effect on bodily conditions, on health conditions. In 2007, which is almost 10 years later, I went to Japan and I got some interesting statistics, which included that up until the late 60s, when the last statistics were really kept, in the traditional Japanese diet, seaweed was being taken at around 4.6 grams per person per day in the traditional diet.
How does it get into the traditional diet?
You get it at almost every meal. If you go and stay in a traditional home in Japan, even today, you'll get seaweed pops up in breakfast, lunch, supper, whenever it is, and it's always there in some little form.
Right.
Even if it's just a flavoring in the soup.
Yeah.
It's a stick of kombu or whatever it is. It's there. So these minerals, particularly, are getting into the diet. But the interesting thing was that this corresponded to what our practitioners were telling us, that when they sort of quadrupled the daily dose, it seemed to become therapeutic rather than just an input and helping to remove deficiencies in the body. So those are these two really important different ways. And then, as I say, you've got the third way, which is, it's a nice, interesting gourmet food. But the trouble is that, especially when I talk to many, many people and groups of people, and I ask them, what do you know about seaweed? The first thing that most people say is, well, it's from East Asia, and it's mainly the Far East, and it's the Japanese seaweeds that everybody knows about, sushi and kombu and all these names, hijiki and so on. Whereas, as we said, seaweed is all over the world. It is a plentiful and abundant food. And we have some of the finest seaweeds around the British Isles. So coming back to your question, why did I get into this?
Yeah.
Because I got into it when I got involved in a company in Norway, which with a Swedish client of mine. I was a management consultant. And he had acquired some land in Norway on the coast, and he had fish, and he had seaweed, and some mineral business, and so on. So I was asked to look at what the possibilities were for developing this business. And we got into using the seaweed in horticulture, and we found that one of the biggest customers for the seaweed was a British company called Max Crop, and it was a world leader in seaweed for irrigation. A lot of development in Israel and India and places where they were using it to irrigate particularly new soils and new crops and so on. And what I noticed was that there were some really interesting things going on with the micronutrients. For example, it had more potassium than sodium. That was interesting. It had not just a sort of a group of nutrients, but you could see that it had all the minerals and trace elements, not just some, and the proportions of those things were very akin to the proportions that we have in the human body. And I went to university in Sussex, and I studied psychology and neurology in those days, which you could do together. And what interested me was that all of the information I had about micronutrient deficiencies around the world, really this seemed to respond to that. There was this incredible balance and proportion of nutrients in the seaweed. And I thought, well, this has got to be interesting. But at that time, we were really much more knowledgeable about the things that related to plants and to horticulture. So we were looking for gibberellids, which are the growth promoters in seaweed. And we were looking at the pigments like viola-xanthan and chlorophyll and all these things that are, wonderful in the body, but they're more interesting for plants and horticulture. And there'd been a lot of research in animal feed as well, but very little as human food, particularly with the species we were working with. These were not the Japanese hijikis or sushi seaweed. So I thought, why are we not eating this stuff? Why? Because there's no real tradition.
Because it's wet and slimy and rubbery.
Wet and slimy, and it's disgusting, and it smells, And we were boiling this stuff, by the way, to reduce it to a liquid form for irrigation. So it really did stink. And in fact, at the time we had a factory in Corby in Lancashire, and Northants, sorry. And the people would say they could smell it for 5 miles around. So, this was, and I'm saying to the board of directors of this company, we really should think about how we could use this for human nutrition. The profile is fantastic, but it wasn't for about 10 years that we actually managed to start doing really serious and very expensive big studies on the composition of these seaweeds.
Right, just 1 second.
I really do like nowadays to explode this myth that that seaweed is some sort of gourmet food, interesting thing, and it's just for the sort of organic middle classes, and it's not. It's actually something that every one of us, especially our children, and our pregnant mothers, should have
staple in their diet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
Tell me then, when you said therapeutic, what do you mean by therapeutic? What therapeutic usages are there for seaweed? Like, what can it help with?
Well,
I know we can't, like, it's not curing cancer and stuff like that, but no. What can it help with?
Well, again, just to go back to the fact that when probably it was introduced into the Japanese diet, hundreds of years ago, I don't suppose that they had done actual research on the seaweed, so they didn't know the total composition, but they knew it was very rich and probably very rich in minerals and so on coming from the ocean because they're good stuff. But really until that time, and from 2008, that's when we started doing our research, about 10 years after we started. And that began to show us that this really is a very, very important component of human nutrition. And that, just from the sort of deficiency point of view, it means that you're putting into the body all of those tiny micronutrients the body uses to do almost everything. No nutrition, no nutrient, no group of nutrients works by itself. It needs a complete environment of other nutrients. Absolutely, it needs everything. And if it doesn't have everything, it will start to grab for them, not find them, and can't perform what it needs to do. So, very important element in the body to get the body functioning properly. And then when you look at what the therapeutic uses are, then you find that when we started our research after doing these major compositional studies, and by the way, we study every time we harvest our seaweed, we do these complete profiles. So we constantly monitor the seaweed. So we have about 17 years now of data, which shows everything that's in that seaweed, the good stuff, the bad stuff, everything that's in there. And that is absolutely crucial, because if you're going to use it on a daily basis, in kids, in infants, in people who are ill, people who have gut dysbiosis, all sorts of things, then it has to be, you have to really know what you're putting in there. And at the sort of levels that we were using at the time, around a gram, certainly no more than 4 grams, we were very, very cautious about how much of this stuff you could put into the body. Then we said, well, now we know what's in it. We can see it's really perfectly harmless. There's no reason why people shouldn't use more of it. But the body doesn't need a lot of micronutrients. It only needs tiny, tiny amounts. So
that's why it's micro.
Yeah, it's micronutrients for a reason, and to make sure that your body has all the bits that you need on a daily basis. You don't need more than 1 gram or 2 grams in a normal healthy person, a normal person who's eating well and has got a fairly varied diet. But then we said, well, what effects would this have if we began to put, maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe 15 or 20 grams into the body? What would we achieve? Now, some of the first research we did was on getting rid of salt in manufactured foods, replacing salt in manufactured foods, where, up to 5 grams a day being used. And so we, first of all, did about 3 years study, and we were able to show that the seaweed is an excellent replacement for salt. And at the same time, you could be getting up to 5 grams of salt, 5 grams of seaweed into the body instead of salt. So we better do some research and find out, well, what's the purpose of that? What could be done with that? What difference could that make? So the first area we began to study was obesity. One of the things was top of our list, and we found that using up to 15 grams a day, and we were using this in a breakfast. This was done at Sheffield Hallam University, and the Centre for Food Innovation, and we were using it in a group of obese people, overweight people, and they were taking this stuff every morning, and during the day they were reducing the amount of carbohydrate that they were taking in, the amount of food they were taking in, and they actually were showing a gradual loss of weight, gradual losing weight. So, and there were reasons for that. That they were getting much better nutrition, so they were less hungry, weren't having, the feeling of sudden hunger. And we found in the seaweed there were certain inhibitors of digestive enzymes which didn't stop the digestion but prolonged the digestion, so that there was a much better digestion of the food and more complete release of nutrients over time. So these are the sort of things that we started to look at, and we went on to look at the antioxidant profile and what that could do as a cleanser of the gut, if you like, against free radicals, against oxygenation. So there were many other things that followed on from that, and there are a number of key areas where to use the seaweed at those higher levels of 10 or 15 even grams per day, then that's different, because then you're only using that seaweed for short periods. It's not a daily thing, and it's not going on for very long. It may be going on for a month or 2 months. So even though you've got certain groups of nutrients and nutrients that you wouldn't want to take at higher levels for long periods, because micronutrients can become toxic at high levels.
Well, like iodine, if you take too much, you'll suppress your thyroid function.
Absolutely. So you would have you would have a high intake of iodine for some time, for a short period, maybe months, and then you go back to your normal 1 or 2 grams a day So you don't, those kind of short periods don't have any bad effect at all. So yeah, so that's
So one of the things I like about the micronutrients in seaweed is it's natural. So I've read a lot of stuff about vitamins, for example, and they're all synthetic. They're all made based on petrochemicals and God knows what else.
Yeah.
They're not biocompatible. It's not the same as having vitamin C from an orange or getting vitamin D naturally from the sun. And iodine, if it's from a plant and from seaweed, I think it's much better than getting it from drops. I used to take the drops until Zach Cox told me to take it, sea green.
Yes.
But it's got iron in it. It's got magnesium, so it's a good way of getting magnesium in your body. Calcium,
yes.
Potassium, zinc, which we know supports the immune system.
Yes.
Selenium, powerful antioxidant, very important for your thyroid and immune system. Copper and manganese. And copper we know about, it's very, very important. So many different metabolic pathways, including iron. It's got your B vitamins in it, particularly B1, B2, B3, B9. Some even have B12 in it. It's got vitamin K, which is again very important for blood clotting and bone health.
Yeah.
And it's got some unique compounds, polysaccharides and alginates and other stuff. I mean, it's pretty amazing stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. It even has all the amino acids, which you don't find in any other food.
Really?
All the amino acids. So you've got all the precursors of protein. So it's a very good protein food.
I don't know that.
Yeah. And the other thing you didn't mention there, pretty good summary, is all the essential fatty acids. And they are in an amazing proportion. They are almost ideal. I mean, they're really, it's if you wanted to formulate a group of essential fatty acids, that's pretty much what you get in the seaweed. And these things do vary. I mean, I'm not saying that all the seaweeds are the same.
So by the way, you're right.
Yeah,
Not that I'm questioning you.
No.
But it's got 9 essential amino acids, glutamic acid, which is important for supporting neurotransmitters function, arginine, which supports blood flow and immune modulation, taurine, that's very important for our bile acid metabolism and antioxidant, glycine, which supports collagen synthesis and gut lining integrity, proline, also collagen supportive. And while the total protein content varies, nori and spirulina have up to 30 to 50% protein by dry weight.
Yeah.
Fatty acids contains both omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. It has EPA, ALA. It's got quite a lot going for it.
Yeah.
This is insane.
Now let me tell you a little story that I tell you because I know you'll appreciate it. There's one seaweed. There is a group of seaweeds that are prolific around the coasts of the British Isles, Norway, the whole North Atlantic. These are our North Atlantic native seaweeds. And the predominantly interesting ones for us for human nutrition are the ones that grow between high tide and low tide. They're not the ones that grow out in deep waters.
No. Those
are not suitable really for human nutrition. They tend to have extremely high iodine, some up to 5,000 micrograms per gram. They tend to have more heavy metals because the water is deep, because they grow in deep water. Same reason for the iodine. But the best ones for human nutrition are these intertidal seaweeds, and the most prolific of those are what we call the rack species. These are WRACK. They're the ones that you kind of when you walk on the beach, you see as the tide goes out, it gradually reveals 4 or 5 or half a dozen species, most of which are the rack species, and they're all brown seaweeds. These are the most balanced and most complete nutrition.
I can just picture it now, down at Rock, down at Damer Bay.
Yeah.
And then you got the brown ribbony type of seaweed. Yeah. You got other seaweeds with little round bubbles of air pocket bubbles in them. I don't know what they are.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, carry on.
So the reason for the story is that we started with one of the sort of most abundant, which is called ascophyllum, which it's a sort of the lowest point of the intertidal species, and it's the one that grows most. And this is an extremely good seaweed. It has a wonderful balance of everything that's there. And then you come up the shore a little bit, and you've got fucus or bladderwrack, which most people know about, and that's very similar, and it's a very close relationship. And then you've got another species that really sort of ends pretty much after you get into the water. It grows half out and half in the water, and its name is called channel rack because it has a little channel inside, which when the water goes out, it holds the water.
Yeah.
So this channel rack is one of these three species that really constituted a major part of our early research. And this particular species called Pelvetia canaliculata, it's a channel rack. And this is a very tiny seaweed. It's like grows no more than that. It's 4 or 5 inches, and it's very delicate. It's tiny. It grows so close to the shore that even a baby wandering down to the seashore would pick that one first. Well, it's interesting because it turns out that one has 3 times the essential fatty acids of these other 2 species in the same family, these rack species. So it's absolutely ideal for children. Not only that, but it has the least quantity of iodine, which is also good for kids. You don't want to give them huge amounts of iodine. You give them half or a quarter the amount that you would give to an adult.
Wow.
So here you have growing right next to the land where a child could reach it. And in fact, the pigs used to eat it, so in Norway they call it pig seaweed. But the child could eat this, and this would be the most ideal thing for a child to eat. The best seaweed in the world, really. Absolutely ideal.
Wow.
It's got all of the other nutrition, but it's got these certain changes in its balance, which make it absolutely ideal for kids. So
tell me,
and
yeah, carry on.
No, the sort of the clinch in the story is that when we started this, it was 1997 when I first started in this business, and just that year they introduced a thing called the novel food regulations, which was a European Union, an EU regulation, which started telling us that we should only eat apples of a certain size and, certain breeds, and bananas have to have, a special curve in them, and otherwise, there was all this sort of stuff going on, if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember.
Okay.
Madness.
And, and somehow or other, they got the seaweeds into there, It wasn't just the stuff that we normally eat, it was the stuff that we might eat if we're really lucky. And seaweed sort of got into these novel food regulations, and they only approved, less than half a dozen seaweed species. And Pelvetia was not one of them. So for the last literally the last 27 years, we've had this little battle going on with the regulations. Pelvetia should be one of the most abundant species in the world. I mean, it's something that everybody should eat, especially kids. But we're still legally not allowed to sell it. And we've come up against this. We came up against this throughout the EU states. We had lots of discussions, and individually we've managed to get the countries to approve it. And even in the UK, we've had trading standards, and we've had the government of Italy has approved it, and all these things. But nevertheless, it's given us enormous obstacles to getting these wonderful seaweeds into the daily diet. Just as an example, it's not been roses. It's not all been easy, and there are still massive battles to fight. Battles against stupidity, in that sense of government regulation and so on and so forth. We're still carrying on. We've also got battles to fight against the, in my opinion, rather myopic and sort of reductionist kind of science, the approach to science. When we did those first studies in obesity, we had a team of researchers who had previously studied extracts from seaweed. That's all they ever studied. So they'd taken all the polysaccharides out of seaweed, and these polysaccharides have been used traditionally in many weight loss products over the years, but they cause all sorts of bad side effects. They have a metallic taste. They upset people's guts. They are basically bulking agents. They fill up the gut, so you think you don't want to eat anything. And of course, they reduce nutrition. They actually, if you did it for long enough, it'd kill people. So we were the first people to do research on whole seaweed, and not only whole seaweed as a whole food, and we were doing the same studies that had been done previously, or replicating those studies, but using the whole seaweed. But we're the first company to do research on seaweed that people could actually then go out and buy in any health food store or by mail order or whatever. So these were also two very, very groundbreaking things to do at the time. And one of the, every time we wanted to do a new study in a certain area, the natural inclination of the academic was to look at, okay, well, what's the thing that's really causing that in the seaweed? What's the active ingredient? What's the most important nutrient? What's the group of nutrients?
What can they patent?
Well, many times commercially, certainly, so that people can patent them.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Patent
and own them, and then make more money out of it. But even without that, the natural inclination was to search for little bits of the thing, and we're going, well, that's not what people are going to eat. It's not what we want people to go and buy. We want people to eat the whole thing, because it's the relationship between those nutrients. And we don't even know, we don't even understand, we can never, at the moment at least, we can never understand the precise relationship between those nutrients. I mean, it is so subtle and so esoteric, if you like, that the relationships themselves are hidden from us. I mean, we cannot possibly study that level. You could never formulate a supplement that would replace seaweed. You could never formulate that strata, that ratio of all of those nutrients. You couldn't put that together in any kind of artificial form. So to take things out of the seaweed, then we're not studying seaweed at all. We're studying merely a group of nutrients or a substance, and of course a lot of that is still being done. But we had this constant battle all the way through, and I mean we'd done 15 years of research, and a dozen studies, and every time we're always facing that. And the other thing that I think you will appreciate too is that it's not just that the natural inclination is to do that, but then when they write up that study, when they talk about it, they then talk about, they talk about seaweed generically. They say, well, seaweed can do this, like seaweed can help people to lose weight, or seaweed can help to, can help diabetics. Or it can improve dementia. It can help us against the degenerative diseases. When they say that, they're denying their own science, because if you've done research on a particular species or a number of particular species that have their own profile, they have their own distinct relationship between all the nutrients in that seaweed, then you cannot say that you just can't buy any old seaweed, however it's produced, whatever is in it. The compositional studies we have done on the seaweed, the first studies we did in 2008 were pretty comprehensive. I mean, because even the universities didn't want to do research on it until we knew exactly what was in it. So we did these early studies, relating to the replacement of salt in manufactured foods, because we need to know what's going in there. But then we did, and those studies were pretty comprehensive. But then 4 years later, in 2011, we got we were able to, through government grants and through using government laboratories, and we did a comparative study of seaweeds produced in 4 different countries, all the same species that we were using, but produced in different places by different methods. And we studied the entire composition, not just nutrients, but also all the contaminants or possible contaminants. And this study was, this was 60 to 100,000 pounds worth of study. So huge study, the first ever study on the total composition of these seaweeds. And the sort of scientific inaccuracy, the sort of non-science of then taking pieces out of that, and the non-science of saying that we've studied these seaweeds where we know the composition, we know exactly what's in there, and we know what that can do, and then going out and saying in a scientific paper, any seaweed does this, or whatever.
Generically.
Yeah, that's not science. It's not scientific.
Quick little interruption, folks. Let me remind you, if you visit my website, docmalik.com, look at the top tab, you'll see I've got a shop. You can buy some merch there, but also under affiliates, you can see some of the products that I'm using at home. And there's Hunter and Gather. And there's a 10% code you can use there. They've got fantastic products. There's a spa and wellness company. Again, you can get 3% discount using Doc Malik. And then there's Sea Greens, Seaweed Nutrition, rich in biocompatible iodine and micronutrients. Again, use Doc Malik, all capitals, for 10% discount. All the details are on docmalik.com/affiliates. Check them out. I don't get any money until you spend and buy something, but every purchase will help support the show. And these are things that we use in the family. There's, they're good stuff, and check it out. And then the next thing I would say is, remember my consultation service, folks. If you've got a pesky condition, you're frustrated with your doctor, you want a second opinion, you feel like you're at a dead end, you got too many questions and too many unanswered, questions, and you don't know how to move forward, pick my brains. That's why I'm here. And so far, I seem to be making a difference. I've got 55-star reviews now, which I'm absolutely delighted about. And the feedback has been amazing. I mean, just the latest one by Gillian. I very much appreciated my consultation with Doc Malik to discuss my 91-year-old mother's health crisis. He talked us through her diagnosis and proposed treatment plan in a way I could understand and answered the many questions we had. It was exactly what I needed to try and get my head around why she's suffering so much and best path forward. Wonderful man, and so pleased to be able to tap into his knowledge and support. Thank you, Gillian, and thank you everyone else who left a review. So folks, yeah, if you want to tap into my knowledge, unfiltered, uncaptured, someone who respects bodily autonomy, understands the sick care system, and also how to be truly healthy, I'm here to help you. Lastly, folks, please don't subscribe to my Substack through the Apple Store, the Apple app. I get literally 50% of whatever you give to me. The rest is all taken by the App Store and Substack. All right, folks, listen, without further ado, back to the show. Thank you so much. Mate, there's a lot of things that are not scientific.
These are the kind of, yes.
There's a lot of things that aren't scientific. Science is just... I've lost faith in science. I've talked about it in the podcast quite a lot. The corruption, the conflicts of interest, the biases.
Yes.
There's a lot wrong with science. A ton. But listen, I want to ask you a few more questions. So I struggle. You should see my little kids. They're tiny.
Yeah.
They won't swallow the capsule. And I've got some of the flaky stuff that you put on your food, your salads.
Yeah.
They don't like green stuff. How do you get it into kids?
How do you get it into kids?
Yeah.
Well,
can you not make a gummy type thing?
The trouble with the gummy thing is that in order to make a gummy thing, you can only get a very, very limited amount of nutrition in there.
Right, okay.
So it has to be an enormous amount of gummy.
Oh, they'd be happy with that.
But they would. but much more clever and much more devious is to use tiny, we have very fine granular form, never buy a seaweed powder, because powdering a seaweed destroys the nutrients.
Okay.
But this very, very small granular form, you can mix into anything. You can put it in a soup. You can even mix it in a glass of water, but it's great in apple juice, for example, something with, flavor that is compatible with it. So you can put these things into anything they're eating, basically, and particularly the things they like. Even if it's popcorn.
So what one is that called? Because you've got so many different things in your shop. What would that be
for
called?
example, there's a culinary ingredient. We call it a culinary ingredient. It's actually the least expensive form as well. And that's a sort of fine granule that you can put into almost anything. We have something even finer called food granules. And the food granules are the same as the capsules, but without the capsule, basically. And those are fine things. Also, there are a little interesting. You say this because I remember when I first started in the sort of early 2000s, I was in all the food stores in London, and Planet Organic had started, and I was going around all the stores, talking with the customers, and I remember distinctly having these tiny children coming up, and the mother would push the pram up, and she'd start asking about the seaweed, and I would say, try this in your tiny child in the pram, Then I would give them little pieces of the pelvicia, the very small seaweed I talked about, right up on the high on the beach. And these little kids would take this stuff and they would put it in their mouths, chew it around and da da da. And I remember this one little kid, he was putting out his hand. I mean, he was too young to speak. And he put out his hand and he wanted more of the stuff, and his mother was just she was, should he have all that? Should he eat that stuff? And this was a normal experience. So kids actually love that, it's like dogs that get onto the beach and they'll eat the seaweed because it's just wonderful, wonderful minerals that they need.
Okay, I'm gonna try again. I'm gonna renew that, visit that. So listen, another thing, you said you were measuring the composition for 17 years.
Yeah.
Has it changed in the 17 years? Or has the composition stayed pretty static?
That's a really good question. So glad you asked it.
Okay.
I would never have thought to answer that. But yeah, and this is the astounding thing. First of all, if you eat vegetables, land vegetables, it depends entirely where they're grown. They even grow the vegetables that you buy in the supermarkets, in the salad packets and so on. They're growing it in water.
I know.
Where's the nutrition? Sorry.
I know this. So the soil is completely raped of all its nutrients. I know that. But I'm also worried about the fact that a lot of the seawater around the UK is pumped with sewage and garbage, especially down in Cornwall.
Okay.
So we get down there and we're always being told, the water's not great.
So let's address the nutrition. I mean, let's address the contamination issue as well.
Over the last 17 years, what's happening?
But the point is that with your average daily diet, you may be buying all sorts of wonderful things, but there is no such thing as a standard which says that these have a minimum nutritional profile. And we've developed a thing called the seaweed, the nutritious seaweed food standard with the Biodynamic Association, which is all about a minimum nutritional profile. So that's one thing. But you asked about the level of nutrition over many years. Now, with your land foods, it's going to vary hugely. So and the consumer has a real job to know what exactly they're eating. And the one thing, and the reason that we've done this, the reason we've been so religiously disciplined about this, about this monitoring our profiles, is because I feel that if you're going to, especially in therapy, especially if you're going to use these things for therapeutic purpose, and if you're going to give them to the population on a very big scale, you really have to know what's in there, and it's got to be consistent. And so the astounding thing is that over those years, as I think you're asking, the levels of the nutrition have changed very, very little indeed. And it changes we now harvest in 4 different places. We started in Norway, then we moved to Scotland, and we started the first harvesting specifically for human nutrition in Scotland in the Outer Hebrides. We then moved to the west coast of Ireland, and now we're up in Iceland as well. So interestingly, we can now look at the profiles of these the nutritional profile in these different places. And we do see some slight changes. I mean, for example, we have much higher iodine in Iceland than we do in Scotland, for example. But overall, I mean, these are minor differences. I mean, not really important, not significant in terms of using the stuff. But what it does say is that between different parts of the world, there are going to be some differences. Certainly there are differences between the species. But over all these years, I mean, the changes are within 10, 15%. I mean, it's nothing. It's not significant. So you have a very consistent, because the ocean is very consistent, and it really doesn't change. I mean, there are places in the ocean which will change, and some are more nutritious than others, depending on the waters. But overall, no. I mean, nothing like the land. The land is entirely inconsistent. And don't forget that species, as vegetation and as animal life evolved on the planet, the more it evolved and the longer it went on, the more individual species had to find places where they could survive. So they limited their, either their soils, they would only grow in certain places, or they grow in certain climates. Whereas the seaweed is the same. It's the same all over the world. So it doesn't have that degree of refinement. So that's why it has all the nutrients in it. Whereas land foods have very, very narrow spectrums of nutrients.
I get that. And the thing is, you don't even know whether nowadays organic is even organic. You just don't know what they're pouring over the food.
No, and frankly, I mean, the organic, from the seaweed point of view, that's one of the reasons why we started the nutritious food seaweed standard quality assurance program, because from the organic point of view, it's more about what doesn't go into it. So, okay, as long as you haven't spread chemicals all over the beach, it's organic seaweed, but it could be completely dead. It could be, just wind-blown seaweed could be taken off the beach, and it's called organic, as long as it's clean. But that's not what we're about. It's about what's actually in it and what effect that's going to have. So your comment about the contamination too is really important. Two aspects of that. One is the sort of natural contamination, and you get heavy metals, for example, ranging from cadmium, lead, all these things, along with the minerals. They're everywhere. I mean, they're in all our foods, and to some extent. So in seaweeds, you as I say, the further out you go in the deeper water, you'll have heavy metals. But in the intertidal seaweeds that we've studied, again, it's extremely consistent. I mean, we've been well under the European, safety levels for all these years. We don't have a problem with that. Interesting case. We had a lot of problems originally with the regulations on arsenic, because arsenic is something that there are different forms of arsenic, and you've got organic and inorganic arsenic, and the arsenic that's a problem for people, that can be toxic, is literally, it's a fraction of the total arsenic. But when we first were harvesting our seaweeds, we were being pulled up left, right, and center because we had these high readings for arsenic. But within that arsenic, I mean, most of the arsenic just goes straight through the body and out. It's not a problem. But you've got this tiny proportion of inorganic arsenic, which is a problem. But the regulations didn't specify that. They just said it's how much arsenic. But so we had to produce white papers and all kinds of stuff in America and here to prove that actually the arsenic should be regulated according to the inorganic content, not the total arsenic. So there's all these kind of issues about the contaminants. But the other form of contamination, which is important, is the allergens. We wanted to go for kosher certification quite early on. We had a lot of Jewish customers in London, and particularly in the therapeutic side, we were using high levels. So we wanted to make sure, and for kids especially, there were no allergens, and you can get cross contamination with crustacea and fish and so on. So again, we did massive analytical studies for 4 or 5 years before we were able to. We went to the Beth Din in London. And we said, here you are. There's proof. There is no crustacea. So we got the kosher certification. But again, I'm not aware of any seaweed producers in the world who have bothered to do that, because they're not generally producing seaweed for nutrition in the sense of a child taking it every day for life. It's it's okay if you have a little bit of crustacea in a piece of seaweed that you're going to eat once a month, in a nice meal. That's fine. But the way that we're using our seaweed, and to me, this is the true meaning of seaweed. It's for our daily use. It's for the completion of our food. And if I know this is a bit disjointed, but if I could go back to what we were talking about earlier, the land vegetation and its evolution has become more and more specific as we as species have become more and more specific, more and more refined, if you like. Our bodies are still what they were, millennia ago. I mean, eons ago. Even if our minds are different and we've got new technologies and everything else, we're still, the chemistry in our bodies is such that we are still dependent upon something.
You're talking
something
about
that is primordial.
You're talking about evolutionary biology. We haven't changed.
Yes.
Our biology has stayed the same 100%. And it's sad. We're on an island and we're so disconnected from the sea. You go to the Mediterranean, you go to Portugal, you go to Sardinia, you go wherever, one of these coastal places. You go to the local supermarket, and the fish aisle is just incredible. They've got all this produce. They've got eels and sharks and big fish and small fish and a million different types of prawns. And you're just like, your eyes are like, wow. You're like, then you take it home and you cook it and it just tastes incredible.
Yeah. And when they did the excavations in London, I mean, back in the 70s, they reported these huge numbers of shellfish that were pulled up from the foundations of the ground, because that's what people were eating in all the pubs, beer and a whole big plate full of scallops.
But this is what I'm trying to say. And now we're on this island and our supermarkets have got this pathetic option of fish. Most of it is from halfway around the world, Madagascar prawns or God knows what, Sri Lankan prawns. And, you know what I'm saying? It's just like the food, it's either
probably
farmed.
Farmed.
It's farmed. So there's a lot of farmed trout, farmed salmon. And that's it. Like, it's just really pathetic options here on an island.
Yeah.
What we have. And like you said, like we're also then disconnected from everything, including the seaweed. It's just quite sad. Yeah. But, I wanted to say...
That's what you were saying earlier, you mentioned this evolutionary biology. And to me, that's what ties us with the seaweed. That's our connection with the seaweed, because then there's no other place we can get that connection with our own, the primordial past of our own chemistry. And that chemistry is replicated almost exactly in the seaweed. It's so much where we came from. And if we don't have that, that's what we're missing. It's hugely important.
You can tell, like, therapeutic benefits of seaweed. I mean, it supports the thyroid, right? Especially kelp and kombu, thyroid hormone production. Yeah. And if you're low in thyroid, hypothyroidism, you get sluggish metabolism, you got low energy. Yeah. You get detoxification and heavy metal binding. So alginate, fusidin, laminirin help bind the heavy metals, radioactive elements and toxins in the gut. They promote elimination through the bowel and reduce reabsorption. It's good for blood sugar and metabolic regulation. The polysaccharides like fucoxanthin improves insulin sensitivity and may help reduce fat accumulation. Seaweed fiber slows glucose absorption and improves glycemic control. It's great for your cardiovascular support. It's rich in potassium, magnesium, omega-3s. EPAs reduce LDL cholesterol, inflammation, clotting risk. It's anti-inflammatory and has antioxidant effects. It's good for immune modulation. It's good for gut health and microbiome nourishment. It's good for your skin and joint health. It's got minerals like silicon, sulfur, zinc, magnesium. Topical seaweed extracts can be used for treatment of psoriasis and eczema and wound healing. It's good for your cognitive and nervous system support. And it's also got antiviral, anti-tumor, and anti-obesogenic potential. So I mean, it's got a lot of good things going for it.
Mm-hmm. Can I just pick up on one of the things you said there, which is interesting, and that's what a lot of people, when they hear about seaweed, they hear about kelp, and it's another sort of myth that it's worth busting. If we could have another explosion, explode the myth. Kelp is called kelp because the Americans call all seaweeds kelp, because their seaweeds are big, long, Pacific, very deep water forests of seaweed. And so they think, they call it kelp, and it is. It's like the wild racks. There are the rack species, and there are the kelp species. The kelp species are the deep water seaweeds, laminaria, and
when you say deep, how deep are they? 50 meters?
Yeah, from sort of 4 meters down to 100 meters. Yeah,
100 meters.
Enormous forests of seaweed. Wow, these are very big seaweeds, and actually kelps are not the family of seaweeds that I would put into human nutrition. We don't need that. We've got plenty of the other stuff. And maybe it's worth addressing another issue that has many times come up, especially when we first started, about the amount of seaweed that there is. Is there enough? Are we going to denude the planet of seaweed if we all start eating it? And the answer is this.
By the way, it's some say they go down to 200 feet, which is about 61 meters.
200 feet, yes.
Yeah. So normally it's about 30 meters, 100 feet. But it can go down further, down to 53 meters. I mean, that's still bloody tall.
It is, yeah. This is a real forest. Beautiful. Absolutely wonderful.
Right.
Would love to go diving in those forests. I've never done that yet. But where were we?
You're talking about the difference between kelp and seaweed.
Yeah. And sorry, completely lost it there.
So kelp is not part of like nutritional bioavailable.
It's not what we use for human nutrition, because that's it. The point is, do we need to go to the kelps to find enough seaweed for human nutrition? No, we don't. It's very good for agriculture. It's great for animal feed. It's great for plant nutrition and horticulture and all the other uses for seaweeds. And there are many. But for the human nutrition, the most important bit is the intertidal species, and I was going to give you an example of how much of that there is. I mean, in one, you will know the Outer Hebrides on the Isle of Lewis. In one particular loch that I'm remembering from, I think it was like 2013. We're in this loch. We're going down the loch. This is when we just when we just started with a what we call it's a motorized mower, and it cuts the seaweed. That's how we're doing it. And so it's cutting the seaweed as we go, and we're in the middle of this loch, and the loch is 7 miles long, and in the morning, only in the morning, we've gone about probably no more than 200 to 300 meters, and we've harvested about 35,000 kilos, right? So huge amounts of seaweed, and that's going to be around 5,000 dried 5,000 dried kilos. 5,000 kilos. 5 tons of seaweed.
I just want to ask. Right? That's answering one of my questions. I was going to ask you, like, for one of those capsules, how much seaweed do you need?
About 5 times to get it dry.
5 to 7 times. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So by that time we've harvested 5,000 kilos of seaweed for human nutrition. And then by the evening, we've almost doubled that. So, and we've gone meters. I mean, and there's 7 miles of that loch, and it's full of that seaweed. So, this is just one loch, and there are thousands of lochs, not just in Scotland, but in Norway, in the British Isles. You've got all sorts of islands and bays, and it's enormous. And this is one part of the planet. America has the same the northern part of Canada
so basically all this resource literally at our feet.
All around the world. We haven't even talked about Russia yet. But, I mean, they're just huge amounts of seaweed and all wonderful to eat. And you only need tiny, tiny amounts. So, there's plenty of seaweed. And then it gets me onto one of my favorite hobby horses of cultivation. There's huge amounts of public money, government grants, funding, all this sort of, big industry that we've created of people putting money into crazy schemes. But a lot of it is going into cultivation. And even around the British Isles, we're seeing, I mean, I know of half a dozen new seaweed farms that are being started. Now, if you remember what they did with fish farms, we created these new species called salmon. It's fun. I love salmon, but it's not a salmon. It's something else. And,
its flesh isn't even pink. They have to dye it.
Yeah.
It's grey. It's horrible. It's disgusting.
And some of it's better than others. It's very varied. Anyway, the point is that with seaweed, when you cultivate, look, natural seaweed, the seaweed we harvest is wild seaweed, and we will never cultivate that seaweed unless we find a very clever way. But that seaweed has been there for 350 million years. It's survived. It is strong. It has antioxidants are way over. Even green tea comes nowhere near seaweed for antioxidants. Fruits, nuts, seeds, whatever, come nowhere near seaweed for antioxidants. This is their protection. This is what they've developed over these eons of time. An amazing being, an amazing life form that is just, it's just all over, and it's survived, and it's survived, and it's survived. And that's what we're eating. That's what we're putting into our bodies, with this perfect ratio and relationship. Now, when you cultivate seaweed, what do? You cultivate some spores in a lab. You transfer those spores to a rope or to some, often plastic now, substrate, and you put that in the ocean. And after 3 or 4 months, because it's very quick growing, you harvest that, cut it off. Now, what happens when you've done that for 100 years or 50 years? You're creating a different species. It's not. They will never face the conditions that seaweed has faced. These are the generations of a seaweed that will completely change over time. So again, we're interfering with nature. We're not going back to the realm of what I call the realm of cause, which is, dealing with the things that we have and then going back to the causes. The cause is to be found in the chemistry of the human body, and is to be found in the chemistry of the natural wild seaweeds. You're dealing with, again, the problem is that we need lots of seaweed. So the easiest way is to create a machine, basically, an infrastructure to harvest it, which suits us. It's we're going to grow loads of stuff. We're going to make lots of money. It's going to be very easy for us to harvest. It's not easy harvesting in the wild. Very difficult and very time consuming and dangerous.
And I'm going to ask about that in a second.
Yeah, but again, we're going in the realm of pharmaceuticals. Really, we're looking at a problem, then we're dreaming up a completely artificial solution to solve
Exactly.
that, and we're merely dealing with the symptom of our own problem.
Yeah, and let's be honest.
Yeah,
you're just thinking how you can make a bigger buck and increase your profit margin.
Yes.
What's easier?
And in the most convenient way.
In the most convenient way, how can you just make the biggest bang for your buck? That's it. That's what it all comes down to. but you're refusing to go to. I didn't even know that you could cultivate seaweed. But anyway, forget all that. Very good that you're not doing that. Well done. Okay.
Yeah, no,
Never.
never.
But what I want to ask you is, how do you harvest seaweed, and where do you harvest it from? Like so much of the British Isles, they are pumping garbage into the seas. You don't want anywhere near Sellafield, where it's like nuclear reactors.
No.
How do you find where you're going to harvest it, and what is it like? What's the logistics like? What machinery do you need, and containments, and all this 35,000 tons, 35 tons of stuff. Where do you put it? Like, and how quickly does it decompose? How do you process it? And how do you put it into that capsule form or dry powder? And like you said, you're not crushing it, so it's granules. Like, can you just talk me through the whole production process?
Yes.
Sorry, it's a big question.
No, it's a wonderful question, and thank you. I mean, often, why did we spend 10 years messing around with our seaweed before we even started to do research? The reason for that is because I started with seaweed that we were producing for horticulture. Yes, it was very good. Yes, it was analyzed. We knew that it was safe for human use as well. We had very high standards in Norway, but we didn't know enough about it. And what I immediately realized was that we have problems with the allergens. We have issues with contamination because of where we're harvesting it. For example, we were harvesting it very close to the shore, and we needed to stop doing that because close to the shore, the closer you are to the shore, the more you get these crustacea appearing on the fronds because they climb up the seaweed. So in order to deal with those sort of issues, we had to change the way that we harvest the seaweed. And in Norway, I was very fortunate. I got, after we started, I found a partner factory in the far north of Norway, up in the Lofoten Islands, which is up in the Lapland. It's way in the Arctic Circle. But the guy there was a wonderful man who I worked with 7 years on this very project of how do we change our method of production so that it is specifically for human nutrition, so that I can give this to an infant of 3 months old. That was my sort of criteria. And we developed a wonderful little aluminium machine. It was the size of this room, slightly smaller, and it had a little cockpit. And underneath we developed this cutting device, eventually a rotary arm, and it's like a fly mower. It's like what do you call those things they cut the grass with nowadays?
Yeah, lawnmowers.
Not even lawnmowers. They use these little things that go round and round and snip the grass, that sort of thing. So, and then we would collect that seaweed that's being cut. This meant that we could go out a bit deeper, away from the shore.
So you custom made a device?
Yeah, because originally it was hand harvesting. I mean, these people were cutting the seaweed from a boat and then collecting it in a big rope and taking it to the shore, And
so now you've got a submersible machine that goes under
not
the water.
submersible, but on the surface. But it has a cutter underneath, and you can see that. And we're cutting. So we're like cutting lanes of seaweed. Literally, we're going through a bed of seaweed, and we're cutting the lane. We're only taking about 300 millimeters,
30 centimeters from the top.
Yeah. Originally, we're taking 600, and we found that was too much. We were still getting crustacea, so we minimized that. And I'm only dealing with one aspect, just.
And then
example.
what? It gets sucked into what in the back?
Then bringing it up. We had to develop all stainless steel materials for these machines. So we're like food quality machines. So we're collecting the seaweed and then we're putting it into a sack basically. And then we're taking it. And the other rule that we had was, unlike the horticultural seaweed, which we were quite happy to dump on the concrete surface and leave it for a while. The rule we made, because we had to get it as fresh as possible, to keep all these particularly the delicate nutrients like the essential fatty acids and so on, and some of the minerals, the vitamins. We had a rule that we must never touch the ground, so it must have no contamination with the ground at all. So it had to be bagged on the vessel, and then that bag would be transferred to a little boat and taken to the shore, and then it would go as fast as possible. It would go into the drying at the factory, because that's the way you preserve the nutrients. So it took years. I mean, it's like a lot of the things we were sort of learning as we go. It was all trial and error.
Yeah.
And we sort of gradually then we were doing our analysis and finding that there was a definite correspondence between the levels of the nutrients, particularly things like vitamin C and the B vitamins and the essential fatty acids. We were getting much higher levels as we decreased the time before we actually dried it. So the faster we could do this process, the better. And that affected, how much we could harvest at one time and how quickly we could get it. So, there were all these factors. And we used our analysis. We used our analysis of the seaweed each time to guide us. So we built up this data, and we were able to sort of see where we were going wrong. And another thing, for example, which common sense, but it took a while to realize it. We were getting quite high levels of silicon, and we didn't realize that was a high level. We just thought that was natural. Anyway, we found that in the deeper water, where we were taking this 300 millimeters now from the top of the seaweed, we weren't getting the high levels of silicon. Well, that was because the silicon wasn't the silicon like the mineral in the seaweed. It was we were churning up sand from the bottom of the sea, and that was the silicon.
Right.
So we said, okay, so what is a real, what is the optimum level of silicon that we should expect to have in the seaweed? So we finally arrived at that with no what we would call contamination, no silicon mineral from the sand. And in Scotland, very interesting, because out on those islands, we're in a very, very ancient part of the world where some of those minerals, there's a thing called gneiss, for example, GNEISS, forms of sand, basically, forms of silica that come from ancient rock particles, and the sea is particularly full of these rock particles. So we're getting some very, very high counts on some of these rock particles. And again, it sort of took us a while to realize what was going on. And so we eventually put in, because we were selling, by the way, we don't just sell our products for consumers and for practitioners, but our main sort of dream has always been, and it's now the sort of half of our business, is getting ingredients into ordinary everyday foods that people eat. That was the principal method by which we thought we could actually get seaweed into everybody's diets, not through rather expensive sort of nice consumer products, but getting it as ingredients, and hence the research we did on salt replacement. That was the idea, if we could get it into foods instead of salt, that's go into almost everything. Perfect. Anyway, the reason I mention it is because that explains why it was so important for us to understand everything about our seaweed. I mean, our sort of primary goal with the Seaweed project was that we would know more about our seaweed than anybody in the world, and we would then have the confidence to do what we're now doing and trying to get it everywhere. But this sort of the process by which we eventually evolved the production methods was very driven by looking at our end product and then going back and saying, well, what created that, and what should we have, and so on. And then when we go from basically after we've dried the seaweeds, we have our raw ingredient, and then we can make that into different forms. We use milling process to make the fine granules, and we use chopping devices to chop into small pieces. And then we, very important, we learn to blend our seaweed so that and I think we're the only people who actually do this. We use our data, our analytical data, to be able to blend our seaweed so that we can produce. Now we can produce a mix as we did with our food capsules, with the sort of optimum mixture of the different species, so that we have those high essential fatty acids and we have our lower iodine or whatever it is. that we want to achieve. And this is something that we can then mix those ingredients, and we can either mix them for customers to put into, let's say, for particularly allergen-free foods or free from foods, and special diet foods for dietetics, for diabetics, for example. And so for many different reasons, people will want to angle their nutritional profile. And then you asked about encapsulation. I mean, we again, when we started encapsulating, we used a company that was able to encapsulate without any additives, without any of the normal flowing agents or
binders and stuff.
Binders and things like this, yes. And we didn't tabletize because it's too many binders and things. So
because all the other vitamins, they all have binders in them.
Yeah.
Yep, Karen.
So we created our capsules using vegan vegetable capsules with nothing else in them. So we've always sold, and this is this is more about the policy of the business of Sea Greens, that we only produce seaweed. We that's all we do. We don't formulate it for headaches, or we don't make formulated products. We leave that to our customers. So if a customer is particularly a specialist in digestive issues, then they will create a formula, and they will probably use other ingredients as well to address those digestive issues using our seaweed.
But that's what I like about your products. It's just natural. It is just what it is. It's just seaweed. So where do you harvest it again? Like, it's all around the British Isles?
Yeah,
is it anywhere particular?
Not all around in Scotland.
Just in Scotland?
Yeah. But we started in Norway, and we ended up in the Lofoten Islands up in the north of Scotland, in the north of Norway. We then used that knowledge after, it was about 10 years later, it was 2009 we first started in Scotland. So 1997-8 we were in Norway. 2009 we started in Scotland. In 2014 really we started on the west coast of Ireland, near Galway. Beautiful spot again, very remote, very full of islands and wonderful. The equivalent of a loch. I've forgotten what they call it in Ireland now, but and then we went up to Iceland, where we have in the north of Iceland we have a bay which is called Breiðafjörður. It's about 25 miles across the bay, and it's just full of tiny islands, and all around these islands you have this wonderful seaweeds. So these are
amazing.
Yeah, this is.
You got to do some nice traveling.
Yeah, and I'm so glad I started this business, and I was 47 when I started. So I have been to places that I would never have otherwise visited, and I've had the most wonderful experiences in nature.
I'm so glad. How often does the harvest have to take place? Like, how often do you have to go and harvest? How often does this take place? Or is it just once a year and get this massive batch of...
It's once or twice a year, and depending on the species, it can be more often. Those very small species also that have different times of the year. I mean, there are certain species which it's best to harvest in September, October, and the others in spring. So, our ascophyllum we harvest in the early months of the year.
And then once you've dried them out, I mean, they must have a shelf life of years and years and years. I mean, it's not something that goes off.
No, extraordinary experiences with that. It's very, very resilient stuff. I mean, if you wanted a food to take to the moon or whatever, that would be it. It lasts for years. We've done analytical tests 5 years after our dried seaweed, and we found even less bacteria than there was to start with. Because it resists back. I mean, it's antibacterial in a big way. So, you don't get mold growing on your seaweed, and the nutritional profile. I mean, some of the more delicate nutrients, like the vitamin C, will go down and fairly rapidly. I mean, over a year or two. But generally speaking, you can go back to. I mean, I found some old seaweed. Literally, this was I found some that we'd stacked in the back of a warehouse, and we'd actually sort of forgotten about these bags, and they were dated 2015. And I said to the guys, I'm going to try this because I want to see, how it tastes. And it was absolutely beautiful. I mean, absolutely. Just, I couldn't tell the difference between what we have today and 2015.
Wow. And the seaweed that we've got here in the Atlantic, is it the same seaweed in the Pacific, in the South, in the North, in the Indian Ocean, or
no?
Do the species really change quite a bit?
Oh yes.
Is there one common species that you can find around the world, or is it definitely?
No. It's more or less. It's more or less. It's more or less regional.
Right.
So that the species that we harvest, for example, as you come down from the far north, you come down to the south, and when you get to sort of Spain and Portugal and the Iberian Peninsula, that's gone really, and then you get new species, and then you go over to the Far East, and they're similar, they're obviously related, and in fact, I have a Japanese godson, and he was so delighted when I found this Pelvicia and gave it to him, and he said, oh, we have something so similar to this, but this is fantastic taste. We don't have the same taste, So it's a fascinating world, and it's so full of similarities, but it's so full of differences, and around the world there are all these different species waiting for us to explore and so on.
And what about, are there any other companies making seaweed capsules like you are? Not that we want to talk about your competition, but how unique is your company?
We are. It's amazingly, Ahmad, we're still unique. There are a couple of companies now, one in Canada, and there are a couple of companies that have tried to do what we're doing, and they've started doing ingredients with their seaweed and so on, but they don't have the background that we have. They don't have 25 years of research and analytical data. So we've got a lot that's really special, and we're really proud of it. But I was saying on the international front, with all these different species, I believe that we've only just. I keep telling everybody, and in fact, I'm just writing a book, first book on sea greens, and in the book, I stress, that this last 25 years we have just been beginning. I mean, we're just beginning to really know what we're doing, and we know nothing compared to what I can see we need to learn.
We could extend that to cover everything.
And because...
honestly, I know nothing.
No, because, as you said, there are all these different species. I mean, we started a company 2 years ago in New Zealand. And in New Zealand, they have the most wonderful seaweeds. And they're not harvesting them at all for human food. They're harvesting them in a very small way for agriculture. And agriculture is very big in New Zealand. But there are wonderful, wonderful seaweeds that are very similar, not in looks or in species, but they will have similar nutritional profiles to the ones that we have here in the North Atlantic. And there are seaweeds in Japan, and there are seaweeds in China, bless them. There's also a lot of contamination out there, and there's a lot of, most of it, 99% of it is farmed. They've gone big time into farming for volume. But for human nutrition, there is, a tremendous future. There really is. I wanted to just, it reminds me, we were talking earlier about, I forgot what it was, some of the things we've learned. And, I was talking about blending the seaweeds. And the things that I've seen that I wouldn't have seen if I hadn't been doing this business. I remember when I first started in Norway, and don't forget, I was 40, 48, 49, 50, I was a bit more active than I'm now. I'm 75 now. But
You look great for 75.
Thank you. I went up I used to go up into the hills, and I used to film the wild elk that would come down from the mountains during the night. Because it's light, or it's semi-light all night up there in the Lapland, and these elk, these huge beasts would come down from the mountains when, you know, everything was quiet, and they would go down to the water and they would start to eat the seaweed. And I watched them, and they're really big creatures, and they weigh tons. I mean, they're huge.
I know, they're massive.
And big feet. And then they would go down, and among the rocks, you know, they would go out, and they would never submerge themselves, but they got very long legs, and they would go out quite far. And I saw that they were making an effort to go to the different species. They were not just standing at the edge and, you know, hogging a particular species. They would go and select. And I thought, there must be an incentive. There must be a reason for them to do that. And it stuck with me. And when we started to do this analysis, and we realized how different these different species are, that was when, and in fact, even one of our earliest products is the food capsules. That wasn't the first one we did. But after a while, I realized that there was a purpose in mixing these things. And it was because I'd watched those elk, you know, going to such an effort to graze across the species. And I thought, well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to replicate that. So that's where the blending came from.
Lovely. Right.
Yeah, he told me before.
Yeah, I just remember your nephew Jeff has created a code for my listeners.
Yes.
So if they use the code DocMalik, DocMalik, all capital letters, they will get 10% off their order. So guys, if you're listening, go visit Seagreens the shop. It's a different website. So
Seagreens.shop.
Yeah, Seagreens.shop.
Yeah.
And use my code DocMalik and you get 10% off. You know, I don't have any sponsors. Like, you're not sponsoring me to do this episode. I don't have any sponsors. My sponsors are all my listeners. You know, a few hundred people pay £5 a month to support this show and pay for everything. And 2/3 of the episodes are free for everyone to listen to. But I've got a few affiliate codes. I have Hunter Gather, which do great mayonnaise and collagen and ketchup, but it's all, you know, there's no rapeseed oil, there's none of, again, the founder Jeff Webster is fantastic. Wanted something really healthy, didn't want to give people toxic garbage, so he's wide awake. And then I've got a sauna company, Heracles Wellness, and then a distilling company. I get a little kickback, £20 for every distiller sold. And now Seagreens, welcome on board.
Terrific.
I'm really glad that, you know, we're able to work together and do this code.
You've got these wonderful people like Zach Cox who come on here as well.
Yes. Well, I've got
do you
lots
know
of
that, do you know how that
people.
came about? I don't know whether he told you the story.
Tell me.
Back in the early 2000s, my wife, who's a psychiatrist, she had a friend in Imperial called Dr. Jack Levinson. Jack was he was head of environmental medicine at the two big private hospitals in London and various other things, and he was a practicing dental surgeon. And he started to use our capsules for detoxing mercury in post-operative amalgam extraction. He was very keen on mercury-free dentistry, and he is the guy who started the Society for Mercury-Free Dentistry. This was back in the late 90s. And so we came across him in about 2001, 2000, yeah. We'd only been going for a couple of years. So he started to use, because he picked up on the ability of this stuff to extract the heavy metals. So although they've got heavy metals in them, again, it's about the ratio of all the nutrients. So they've got some heavy metals in them, but they've also got much more polysaccharides and iodine and the things that are needed to take the heavy metals out of the body. So he started to use this, and gradually over a couple of years, he was using all kinds of, he was using pharmaceutical drugs, but he was also using things like charcoal and various other things to do this extraction, to do this detoxification. And in the end, he said to us, there is actually nothing out there that you don't have in your seaweed. Even in the drugs, they don't have anything there that your seaweed can't do. So he got into using this, and he used it for around 2 years, and he did a lot of research on the fecal studies of the patients that he was working with, and it's quite clear. And now there is a lot of research on the ability of the seaweed to remove heavy metals. But anyway, what happened was that the fact that autistic kids have a lot of problems with the retention of heavy metals, either through dysfunctional gut or because they're not metabolizing food properly or whatever. This was picked up on by a lot of clinicians working with autism, and it was something that led us into the whole field of autism. It also led us into, and funny because when I first came in, I saw you got a book here by Sally Fallon of the Weston Price Foundation.
She was on my show.
And, you know, she's talking about nourishing traditions. I mean, she's talking about traditional foods. And this whole thing came together because a lot of the practitioners who are working with autistic children are going back to basically traditional diets, traditional foods, in order to solve these problems, these kind of problems. And one of her, I wouldn't say disciples, but one of the people that Weston Price worked with very closely was Natasha Campbell-McBride.
Also been on my show.
Really amazing. Well, she had begun to use, we didn't know at the time, but she was using our capsules for her son as an autistic child. And so she has taken on and developed this. And the whole evolution of our work today has started because of people like Natasha Campbell-McBride, Sally Fallon, people like Zach Cox, who picked these things up, find their own uses, and learn and read what other people are doing and talk to other people, and it's that ferment of human relationship and genuine good intention and commitment to doing things that are worthwhile and useful that has taken us forward. And by doing what we're doing, I hope that we are creating a kind of a culture around this true meaning of seaweed and true uses for it, respectful uses, useful uses.
No, listen, just listening to you and talking to you, I sense that you're not just a capitalist businessman trying to make money. You've got a love of this product. You love seaweed and you want to respect it and honor it and share its bounty, nature's bounty with humanity. And I can see that. I can sense that. But listen, you also brought some gifts. And while you're getting those gifts ready and explaining what they are, I'm going to do a quick shout out to my listeners. So as you folks know, I do a consultation service now. So if you're, contemplating surgery, or it doesn't even have to be surgical. If it could be medical. If you're not sure about your medication, you want to review your diagnosis, you want to see, understand what it actually means for you. If you've come out of a consultation rushed with more questions than answers, if you're just feeling like, what is going on? What are my options? What are my mainstream medical options? What are my alternative options? Book a consultation with me. So here's a review. This was the one, actually, when you came in, Simon, this chap was just on the Zoom consultation with me, and this is a review he's already left. So this is from Phil. I organised a consult with Doc Malik following a somewhat depressing diagnosis and consultation with an orthopaedic surgeon here in Australia. Doc Malik walked me through the anatomy of my issues and discussed a number of possible options that I wasn't aware of. The consult was relaxed. Well, I was doing it in my garden, as you saw. Comprehensive, and all of my questions were answered. I came away feeling like I had control over my situation again, with a plan that I am able to execute. Well, listen, thanks, Phil, for the review. And everyone listening, if you think you could benefit from my knowledge, I'm acting as a health advocate, please book a consultation with me. You can visit my website, docmalik.com, or docmalik.setmore.com. Both of them will lead you to the consultation pages. All right, back to you, my friend. What have you brought me? Thank you so much, by the way, for all of this.
Okay, I brought you, what is it?
I love gifts, by the way, so thanks for that.
More than 6 months supply of food capsules. And and I hope that you'll let me know how it goes.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
2 a day religiously, and I'm so pleased if you can tell me how you get on with that.
I will do. Thank you.
2 a day is all you need, and if you're feeling crap, just double the dose at least.
Okay.
And if you feel a cold coming on, up it to 6 a day.
All right.
This is the kind of use of it. Go by what you feel. These are 2 condiments that we make, which all came out of the replacement of salt with seaweed. So one of those is at 25% salt instead of 100% salt, 25% salt, and the other one is 50% salt. So the beautiful thing is you can still use your salt, but instead of having too much sodium chloride, particularly sodium, you're balancing that out with all the other minerals. So it's completely harmless. There was some research done in Japan.
Wow. Okay.
Where they gave rats so much salt that they died from a heart attack, basically. Then they gave them 50% salt and 50% seaweed, same amounts of salt, but they were fine. Why? Because all the minerals in the seaweed were balancing out. It's the relationship again between the nutrients. When you have the right sort of relationship between things, they're fine. When you don't, it all goes to hell.
Yeah.
We could say a lot about our society in the same way.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
All right, I'm just going to read this out. So the ruby one, all the minerals, quarter the salt, and then you've given me the mineral salt, which is twice the flavor, half the salt. Love it. And it's seaweed dried ground frond of dulce, palmaria palmata, and winged kelp, Alaria esculenta. It's very difficult to pronounce these. And then the other one is seaweed dried ground frond, knotted rack. I love all these names. It's brilliant. Fantastic. Listen, thank you so much.
Okay, and
you got some books and leaflets.
Bits and pieces here.
So talk me through this. What is all of this?
These are the
into the mic.
This is the one on the left. I don't know whether you can see it. The one on the left is the kind of
hold it up to the camera.
Yeah, I mean the one on the left is the kind of consumer side, and this is what nutritionists work with, and consumers can use this stuff direct and so on. And then the other one here, which is this one, is all about our ingredients for mainly the food industry, food and beverages, but also for a lot of companies producing formulated, natural, mainly natural remedies and nutritional supplements around the world.
Oh wow! And you've got all your nutrient data and everything. Polyphenols. Why are polyphenols important?
Polyphenols are so important because they're the antioxidant capacity. They're the cleansers of our bodies.
Exactly.
They're the fighters against free radicals in the gut and in our blood. They're the cleansers really. And they've got a piece about iodine sufficiency. And then there's something. This is something everybody should get. It's called Something for Everyone, and it's the story of how we developed the nutritious food seaweed standard, which I was talking about.
All right.
And it talks about, it puts it into an international perspective. Many people, a lot of small companies working with seaweeds, and there is a seaweed community out there, and it has a long way to go. It's just beginning. It's very exciting. And there's one about our quality standards.
Do you know what? I there's a lot of love into this, isn't there? You put a lot of love into this.
Yeah, and I hope that in the next 50, 100 years, many others, like my nephew, will, gradually develop the whole thing. And we'll do it slowly, step by step, with people like Zach Cox, with some of your other people like Natasha Campbell McBride, all these people.
Me?
Yeah. You, Ahmed, Malik, we're part of the business. Yeah, it's not my business. It's our business. I've created a trust. We're not selling the business. We have, we've only just started. Why sell it? We will be a global project, hopefully, and we're beginning to be. We sell in 16 countries. We have.
So what countries do you sell in? So I have a lot of listeners in America, Canada,
Oh
Australia.
yes, we're in America. We're not in Canada yet. We're
Australia?
in America. We're in Australia. Very big time. Very successful in Australia. We're in New Zealand. We're in most of the European countries, particularly successful in Scandinavia and in Slovenia, funnily enough. We have a young couple in Slovenia who took this on about 10 years ago. And they were as passionate about it, and still are, as I am. And they've developed the most fantastic business in Slovenia. They're in all the stores, and she's a nutritionist. So yeah, we have some wonderful people involved around the world.
So one last question, actually, I just suddenly remembered again. So like the soil is deficient, and all life,
Yeah.
all life, biological life, plant, animal, birds, everything relies on like 1 feet of topsoil.
Yes.
And we've raped it.
Absolutely.
And then we dump phosphates and fertilizers on top of it.
Yes. And imbalance it the same way we do our diets.
Exactly. And it is lacking organic matter. The organic matter has gone from 75%, 80% to like 5%. We just dump all this chemical garbage on top.
Yeah.
Instead of using phosphates and fertilizer, can they just use this?
Yeah, and I
How much does this help in terms of rebalancing?
What you seem to be touching on is the whole need to rebalance our bodies in terms of our nutritional profile, but rebalance our bodies in terms of our energy and our the relationship of our chemistry really inside. That's very, very important. And that will have an effect on our behavior and our thoughts and our inspiration and our openness to one another and to God, and to the same with the soil. Soil is terribly imbalanced, and the soil needs that same conditioning and the restoration of relationship and balance in the soil. And all of it comes out of what you mentioned earlier, which is about respect. If you respect something, if you honor something, it's temporal as well as its sort of spatial context. You will do for that thing what's best for it, just the same way as you will do it for your friends, your own community. So it's that, to me, is the heart of it, because if you've got the intention right there, then your action comes from that. Whatever you do, whether it's to do with the soil or to do with your health, your body, your balance, you'll do it because it's coming from you. It's not something imposed from outside. It's welling up, just like the seaweed's welling up, I think. And it's coming back to us, from our own past. It's what we are. It's part of what we are.
But how much could this help the soil today? Like we talk about regenerative farming, could this seaweed help if this was sprayed on top of all the soil? How much could it do in terms of healing the damage?
Tremendous. I mean, we supply many organic and biodynamic farmers, particularly at the moment. We've sort of gone for that sector because they're people who really care about it and understand it. For example, we have a wonderful cattle farmer in West Sussex, where we are based, and they put it on one half of their fields, and they left the other half without the seaweed. And they told me that, and then they opened the whole thing to the cattle, and all the cattle were found on the side where the seaweed was grazing. They just know, that's the place to go.
Wow.
Got the seaweed. So that's just something on the soil. But one of the things, and we have done a bit of research on this already, and we are starting an innovation centre in Sussex, in the Warren Estate where I live and where we have the base. We're starting an innovation centre. One of the projects is on composting, because I think that it's not just putting seaweed back into the soil, but it's putting soil back into the soil. We need to create the soil, and so to actually produce the compost with seaweed in it, which is what is going to feed the life in that soil. Is the really important thing. And then you're putting something back into your soil that has that nutritional balance. And then you can spray it on crops. It's very therapeutic to spray it on crops. One of the big proofs that we learned in the max crop business is that it helps protect the crops. So you get a difference. I can tell you get a difference of 1 to 2% if the temperature drops 1 or 2%, it can kill the plant. So, and it will make that difference of 1 or 2%. So it keeps the protection up to the effect of 1 or 2% temperature just alone. These are real effects, real protective for the plant. So that there are many ways that you can get it back into agriculture and into the soil. And there are companies doing this. There are lots of companies in the horticultural side with seaweed. But again, most of them are not using the whole plant. They're extracting, like they'll extract the minerals and they'll put it into a mix because it's cheaper and it's, and it's easy to distribute it.
It's a shame.
But yeah, it's what we're trying to promote, and what as you can see, I'm really passionate about is using what nature has given us. Funny, actually, when I first came in here, I looked at Sally Fallon's book that was on the table, and I thought, well, when we start talking, let's start from there, actually, because let's start with what we've got. I'm a great believer in starting with what we have. Don't dream about what you should have or what you have to strive to get before you can actually do what you want to do. We should take what we're given. We're given the seaweed as a whole. Don't try to break it up and take pieces out of it that you might think are good. It's the whole seaweed, which is perfect.
Mate, have you ever been to a fancy restaurant and been given deconstructed desserts?
No,
I can tell you.
Fortunately, I haven't.
I can tell you right now.
I believe it.
I like my tiramisu like it is. Yeah. I like my apple pie like it is.
Exactly.
I don't want a deconstructed apple pie.
What is a deconstructed?
What the frack is that?
What do you get?
You get nothing. You get you get something that looks like art but tastes like art.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want that. I want an apple pie.
I agree. I actually
don't deconstruct something that works so well.
True. I try to avoid Michelin star restaurants, not only because of the price, but because it's too pretty, and it doesn't taste of anything. Yeah.
Well, there was a time when I was earning big bucks as a surgeon, and I loved food, and we would go to Michelin star restaurants, and when we did, it was the 1 star that we realized were the best. Because this chef was striving and it was close to normal food and it was delicious. 2 star was hit or miss. 3 star was just garbage. Right. Expensive, pompous, and looked like art, tasted like art.
Right.
Actually, just complete waste of time.
Yeah.
So yeah. And now, it's very hard for me to find food in a restaurant that I think is better than what I can cook at home or my wife can make at home.
Yeah.
We just. I get my meat from a local farmer, regenerative farmer, and the meat is just delicious. When I put it on a barbecue, it doesn't need much. And I make lovely, potatoes, roast potatoes, and beef fat. I sprinkle your granules already with the flakes over it already.
All right, yeah.
I've got some of your stuff already, my friend.
Oh, good.
And yeah, it just tastes wonderful. And you go to a restaurant, you pay for your roof, everything's cooked in rapeseed oil, and I don't think they put the same love into it. It's about the love and honouring
absolutely
the ingredients and everything.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about. Yeah. Like, I put a lot of love into my podcast.
You do. I can see.
I think that's the secret to success, actually, is making sure that whatever you do, you love.
It is.
For the sake of loving it and honouring it and respecting it. And money and profit will come if you're successful and good at what you do.
It does.
But if your main driver is to just make money, then you might have some short-term gain, but it won't be sustainable in the real sense of the word sustainable. Or it will make you a lot of money, but it will hollow you out from the inside.
Yeah.
So what do you want? Just be passionate about whatever it is that you do and honor and respect that whatever it is.
Yeah, and my other rule for Seagreens is go at our own pace. Don't think that we have to rush You know, we're not, we've no train to catch. We are the train. We you know, we from time to time we've been worried over the years. Oh, will somebody, you know, get there and wipe us out because they'll, you know, have more money than we do and get there faster, and they haven't. And you know, it doesn't matter. You know, we'll go at the pace that is right, and with demand, we don't want to create a demand. We just want to respond to what's needed to be done.
Beautiful. Couldn't have said it better. Right, last question of the day, my friend.
Yeah.
You're on your deathbed, hopefully many years from now, but it could be next week. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm not scared of dying.
You never know.
I've had a good life. I'm 50 at the end of this week, and it's fine. It's all good.
Yeah.
So listen, you're about to meet your maker.
Yeah.
Before you do, you've got your loved ones around you. I don't know if you've got any children or not.
I don't have children, no.
Okay.
No.
But you've got loved ones around you.
This is one of my children, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you've got your loved ones and your friends and family around you. Before you pass on and meet your maker, what words of wisdom and advice would you give them?
To these people around me, I would just say that you're here for a reason. You're here for a purpose. You may not even understand what it is. Just do what seems to you good, seems to you the best. Don't try to change anyone. Don't try to change anything. It's fine the way it is. Enjoy it and take your part in it. Make your part in it. And do what you have to do. And do it as well as you can. That's what I'd say.
Great place to end. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
Okay. Lovely to see you.
So this is I have a really nice outro music to my podcast, and some people who are like really the proper diehard fans, they stay right to the bitter end.
Right.
And sometimes I leave this little Easter egg, so they get a little bit extra bonus chit chat. And
that's lovely.
Yeah, but I want to tell you this on air rather than just off air. Yeah, I was just beginning to say to you, you know, I'm really glad you're here on this planet and you're making this wonderful thing. I've moved, as you know, from giving my kids Lugol's iodine and everything. I've been saying to them, look, we need to do this, and I've been actually sprinkling in their food. I haven't got them to take the capsule yet. But you're doing a lot of good work, and I think what greater pleasure can there be in life to know that you've contributed a net positive to this world, that you know what, you're leaving it better off than when you arrived. And I think you have, with Sea Greens tapping into this beautiful bountiful nature thing that it's giving us, and saying, right, I'm going to get it out of the sea and I'm going to put it into people's food and diet. Good for you, man. Seriously.
Thank you. That's very nice.
That's just brilliant. Brilliant you're doing this.
Yeah.
And did anyone, has anyone ever looked into the past to see, 200 years ago, were people in Scotland eating seaweed 300 years ago?
Yes, they have. And there's the big chapter in my book about the history like that. And I've been trying to find out what was done and what initiatives, if any, were similar to what we're doing. And I have found 2 or 3 in the past. I found during the Second World War in Norway, I found that there was a woman, a priest, the first woman priest in Norway. She wrote a little book about how, this was in 1942, she wrote a little book about how the Norwegian people should start to use the seaweed around their shores, because they were starving. I mean, they were, in terrible state. The economy was gone completely. So, I mean, the people were starving in Norway, believe it or not. I mean, it's not a country where they have loads and loads of food. They have to import. So she wrote this little book and saying, use the seaweed directly in your food. Use these species. And she's talking about the species that we're harvesting. And she said, use it in your garden. Put it on your, start to grow your own vegetables and put it in the soil, stuff like that. And so she was one of the first examples I could find of really an attempt to influence a population to get it into their daily food. And then I found after the war in Germany, funnily enough, there was a guy who was he was a baker, and there was a sort of a community of bakeries, like an association of bakeries, if you like, in the north of Germany around Hamburg. And this guy who he was born very close to the Danish border, and he developed a special bread mix containing, funnily enough, Norwegian seaweed. So there had been some interaction, clearly. And I found that he had tried to get the seaweed into the daily bread. That was his idea, because after the war, of course, in Germany, nutrition was a big, big issue as well. And he got government support for it. And finally, they wound up with about 50 bakeries making this, what they called black bread. In those days, it was pretty basic seaweed. It wasn't, they didn't go to the effort that we do for human nutrition. It was just, taking the seaweed straight out and probably half burning it in the mill, and drying it and putting it into the seaweed. So it's called black bread because it made it go black. And he got it into, probably a huge part of the population. And that coincided with the late 1950s. You got the sort of introduction of everybody was going for white bread, and everything was, people were turning to mass-produced foods, and the sort of consumerism was really beginning to come in the late 50s. So nobody wanted to eat black bread anymore. It was like, white processed bread, the best thing, best thing since sliced bread.
That needs to be fortified.
Absolutely. Now needs to be fortified. But then I found another example at about the same time as this guy was doing the bread exercise, and they may have been related. I can't find any connection, but there was a guy in Norway who actually registered in America. He took out a patent on a mixture for a bread mix containing seaweed. So that these two may have had a relationship, but I can't find any. But he introduced very much the same as we did. And don't forget, I didn't discover this until 2008, 2009. So it was long after we'd started. But he was also doing the same thing. He was clearly trying to develop ingredients that would go into people's food. And he was developing little like capsule products, except he didn't have capsules. It was like tablets that people would put. And he made a little video, which is on our website, actually. And it shows the father of the family is taking a capsule with his coffee in the morning, wearing his suit for breakfast. And his daughter is mixing some seaweed in a glass of water. That's it. And the woman is cooking at the stove, and she's putting the culinary ingredient, effectively, the ground seaweed, into a pot of potatoes that she's cooking. So clearly that, there have been people with this inspiration before. But they often didn't get anywhere. They died. Maybe it wasn't the right time. Who knows? But I do think the right time is now, and we've been going for 27 years, so there's a chance we might continue and succeed.
Oh, definitely you will. Yeah, it's funny. There's so many things that people ate and it was normal, like offal meat, heart, liver,
yes,
kidney.
Not waste anything.
Don't waste anything. And all of it is good for you.
Yeah.
And now people look at, and actually even if you look at things like dandelion has got so many beautiful properties.
Yeah.
Every part, the flower, the stem, the roots, everything can be ground up. You can make teas out of it, everything. I've had Barbara Wilkinson, who's head of the British Herbal Society, on talking about everything, common hedgerow type plants you can just use for so many different reasons. Yeah. But that knowledge has been lost, and now these things are ridiculed. Oh, it's just a weed, or offals. That's cheap cuts. That's who would want to eat that? Yuck. Mm-hmm. And now we just want processed burgers from McDonald's that actually, or any fast food joint, which if you leave on a kitchen shelf won't rot or go moldy for years, because even the mold doesn't want to eat it because it's so dead. That's right. It's so plastic. It's so artificial. Yeah. But we just think all this convenience food is great for us. Actually, convenience food is not convenient for your health. And all these things like liver is great for you, and heart is wonderful for you, and seaweed is good for you, and all this stuff, and bone broth, and all this stuff that's nourishing, wholesome. All these traditions have been mocked and ridiculed and deemed quackery and consigned to the bin of history. But no, we need to revive these things, because humanity's heading off a cliff right now. And I think, yes, progress is great, but it's also important to conserve. And the reason why is because a lot of our traditions, a lot of the things we do, have been built up over decades, centuries, and millennia. We have learned that these things work. Yeah. Whether it's looking after the family unit and having a community, or whatever it is, these things need to be preserved and conserved and valued and respected. But also new things need to be embraced. But we seem to want to discard all of our tradition and just embrace this unknown future of science, apparently.
Yeah, and
when it's the exact opposite of science.
And as you said, foods that are definitely devoid of real, balanced and complete nutrition.
You could question whether it's even food.
Manufactured foods, so much manufactured foods. Frightening. When I started this, I spent some time in supermarkets watching people's trolleys and just looking at what is actually going out there every week in the family trolley, and more than 50% manufactured foods, foods that are, as you said, deconstructed and constructed again and fortified and messed about with. Very little that is actually real.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's got to affect people's behavior.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
All right, let's wrap it up now. Thanks, by the way.
Thank you.
All right. I, Ahmed Malik, am a private civilian protected by the Geneva Convention. My Substack, social media posts, and podcasts are my personal experiences, observations, and opinions. This information is for educational purposes only. Although I am a doctor, I am not your doctor, and I am not providing medical or legal advice to you or to the wider public. I am not licensed or registered with the GMC or any other licensing board. The responsibility for the interpretation, due diligence, and use of the information from my Substack and my podcast lies with you, the viewer and or listener. Please do your research and use your discernment. It is not my intention to harass, intimidate, offend, defame, conspire, blackmail, coerce, or cause anxiety, alarm, or distress to any man or woman, and the information presented here is done so with peaceful and honourable intentions. Enjoy, folks.